My mother was crying. My father's lips were moving, whispering apologies that came 2 decades too late. And standing before them was the girl whose body they had helped bury in an unmarked grave, the girl whose murder they had kept secret while her spirit rotted in silence beneath the earth. This is because of me, I wanted to scream. I'm the one who woke her. I'm the one who heard her voice and followed her instructions and gave her the power to crawl back into the world of the living. But my voice was frozen in my throat, just like my legs were frozen to the ground, just like everything in my life had frozen the moment I first heard a dead woman whisper my name in that graveyard. The figure raised her hand, and darkness began to gather around it like smoke, like a promise of death. My parents didn't run. They didn't beg. They just knelt there, accepting what was coming. Because they knew. They had always known. That some sins don't wash away with time. That some secrets don't stay buried. That some debts demand payment in blood. And I was the one who had brought the collector to their door. My name is Amara, and I need to tell you what happened in my village. I need someone to know the truth before it's too late, before what's inside me finishes what it started. This isn't a story meant to entertain you. This is a warning. It began 2 months ago, during the long dry season when the earth cracks open and everything turns to dust. My father had taken a job from the village council to clear the old burial ground at the edge of our community. Nobody had touched that place in over 15 years. The new cemetery, with its neat rows and painted crosses, had replaced it. But the elders said the old graves needed respect, needed to be cleaned before the rains came and washed everything into the river. My father is a day laborer. He takes any work he can find. When he asked me to help him, I said yes. School was closed for the holidays, and my mother thought it would teach me discipline. I was 15. I thought I understood what death was. I thought graveyards were just quiet places where bodies turned to dust. I was wrong. The burial ground sat at the end of a footpath that wound through thick bush and fever trees. The first morning we arrived, the sun was already hot, turning the air thick and heavy. My father handed me a panga and pointed to the overgrown graves. Most had no markers. Just sunken patches of earth, some with rocks arranged in rough patterns, others with nothing at all. We worked without talking. My father cleared the bigger shrubs while I pulled weeds and swept away dead leaves. By mid-morning, my hands were blistered and my throat was dry as sand. That's when I heard it. A woman's voice. Soft, like someone whispering right behind my ear. Not that one. I stopped. Turned around. My father was 10 meters away, his back to me, chopping at a stubborn bush. There was nobody else. Just graves and trees and silence. I told myself it was the heat. That my mind was playing tricks. I went back to sweeping. The grave beneath the twisted acacia. Start there. This time I couldn't ignore it. The voice was clear, gentle, like a mother speaking to a child. I looked toward the eastern corner and saw it, a grave half hidden under a gnarled acacia tree, completely swallowed by tall grass and thorny vines. My legs moved before my mind could stop them. I walked to that grave and knelt down. Started pulling away the grass with my bare hands. Yes, the voice said, and I felt a coldness pass through me even though the sun was burning. You can hear me. Good. My hands froze. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Who are you? I whispered. Silence. Just the sound of my father's panga striking wood in the distance. I waited, barely breathing. The voice didn't come back. I convinced myself I was imagining things, that I needed water and shade. But my hands kept working anyway, clearing that grave like something was guiding them. When I finished, I could see the full outline, a rectangular mound with no stone, no cross, no name. Nothing to say a person had ever been buried there. "Amara, come eat," my father called. I stood up on shaking legs and walked to where he'd spread a cloth under a tree. He'd brought chapati and cold tea. I ate without tasting anything, watching him from the corner of my eye. He looked tired but content, unaware that anything was wrong. "You're quiet today," he said. "Just tired, Baba." He nodded and drank his tea. "We'll be done in 5 days. Then you can rest." I didn't tell him about the voice. What could I say? That a dead woman was speaking to me? He would think I was sick, touched by the sun. That evening, walking home through the bush, I felt eyes on my back. The shadows seemed darker, longer, reaching for me. I walked faster, almost running by the time I reached our compound. My mother was cooking ugali when I came inside. My younger brother Juma was doing homework at the table. Everything was normal. Safe. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me home. "You look pale," my mother said, touching my forehead. "Are you sick?" "No, Mama. Just tired." She watched me with concern but said nothing more. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay on my mat in the room I shared with my 2 sisters, staring at the ceiling, replaying that voice in my head. So soft. So certain. Like it had been waiting for me. The next morning, I didn't want to go back. I told my father my stomach hurt, but he said the work needed finishing and that fresh air would help. So I returned to the burial ground, my feet heavy with dread. The voice came as soon as I stepped through the entrance. "You did well yesterday." I stopped walking. Looked around. My father was already ahead, gathering the dried brush we'd cut the day before. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. "Only what was taken from me," the voice said. "I want to be remembered. I want them to know I was here." "Who are you?" "Someone who was forgotten. Someone who was buried without prayers, without tears, without truth." A chill ran down my spine despite the heat. "There are 3 white stones near the baobab tree," the voice continued. "Bring them to my grave. Place them where my head rests." I should have refused. I should have run to my father and told him everything. But something in that voice pulled at me, a loneliness so deep it made my chest ache. I found myself walking to the baobab tree, finding 3 smooth white stones half buried in the red earth, carrying them back to the unmarked grave. I placed them carefully at the head of the mound, forming a small triangle. "Thank you," the voice whispered, and I felt something cold brush against my cheek like invisible fingers. "You're kind. Not like the others." "What others?" But the voice went quiet. Over the next 3 days, it gave me more instructions. Clear the grave near the thorn bush. Move the broken wooden cross from the northern section. Pour water on the ground where the mango tree grows. Small tasks. Simple things. And I did them all. I couldn't stop myself. My father noticed I was focusing on certain graves, but he seemed pleased that I was working hard, taking the job seriously. He didn't ask questions. On the 5th day, as we prepared to finish the work, the voice changed. The softness was still there, but underneath it was something else. Something sharp and angry. "Soon they will pay," it said. "The ones who put me here in darkness. The ones who pretended I never existed." "Who?" I asked, forgetting to whisper. "Who are you talking to?" my father called out, his voice sharp. I spun around. He was staring at me, his face pale, his eyes wide. "Nobody, Baba." I was just, thinking out loud. He didn't move. Just kept staring at me like he was seeing something terrible. "We're done here," he said quietly. "Pack your things. "We're going home." We left the burial ground in silence. But I could feel the voice following me, wrapping around me like smoke. And I knew, deep in my bones, that leaving that place wouldn't make any difference. Because whatever I had awakened was already inside me. That night, the first person in the village died. Old Kamau died in his sleep. They found him the next morning, lying on his back with his eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. His mouth was twisted like he'd been trying to scream but couldn't. The strange part was his hands. Both of them were clenched so tight that when they tried to straighten his fingers for burial, two of them broke. My mother came home from the market with the news. She was shaking as she told my father, her voice low so my siblings wouldn't hear everything. They say his wife woke up and he was just lying there, cold as stone. But his eyes. Mungu Wangu, his eyes looked terrified. My father said nothing. He sat at the table, his hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold. He hadn't looked at me properly since we left the burial ground the day before. I felt sick. Because I knew. The voice had said they would pay, and now it was happening. That night, I tried to pray. I knelt beside my mat and whispered every prayer my grandmother had taught me, but the words felt empty, like they were disappearing into nothing. And then I heard it again. "One down," the voice said, soft and satisfied. "More to go." I covered my ears with my hands, but it didn't help. The voice wasn't coming from outside. It was inside my head now, living in the space behind my thoughts. "Please stop," I whispered. "He's dead. Isn't that enough?" "Enough?" The voice laughed, and the sound made my skin crawl. "He lived 20 extra years. 20 years of breathing, eating, laughing, while I rotted in the ground with no name. Is that fair? I don't understand. What did he do to you?" "He watched. He did nothing while they killed me. While they dragged my body to that place and buried me like an animal. He was young then, but he knew. They all knew." I wanted to ask more, but my sister Nyambura rolled over on her mat and mumbled in her sleep. I lay down and pulled my blanket over my head, trying to block out everything. But sleep wouldn't come. 2 days later, Mama Wanjiku's entire goat herd died. All 15 of them. She went to feed them in the morning and found them lying in the pen, their bodies stiff, their eyes rolled back white. There was no disease, no sign of struggle. They had just stopped living. The village began to whisper. People gathered at the chief's compound, talking about curses and witchcraft. Some said someone had hired Mganga to bring evil to our community. Others said it was punishment from God for forgotten sins. My father stopped eating. He would sit outside our house at night, staring into the darkness, his face drawn in gray. My mother kept asking him what was wrong, but he wouldn't answer. I wanted to tell them. I wanted to confess everything. But every time I tried to speak, my throat would close up and the words would die in my mouth. The voice came to me every night now. Sometimes it told me things about people in the village, secrets they'd kept, lies they'd told, sins they'd hidden. Other times it just whispered my name over and over until I thought I would go mad. On the 7th day after we finished cleaning the burial ground, the children started getting sick. It began with Chage's daughter, little Akinyi. She was fine in the morning, playing with her friends, and by afternoon she was burning with fever, her body shaking with convulsions. They took her to the dispensary, but the nurse couldn't find anything wrong. No malaria, no infection, nothing. Just fever that wouldn't break. By evening, 3 more children had collapsed with the same symptoms. By the next morning, it was 7. The village descended into panic. Mothers kept their children inside. The chief called for prayers at the church. The old women began talking about cleansing ceremonies, about calling a proper mganga to break whatever curse had fallen on us. I watched it all happen, feeling like I was trapped underwater, screaming but making no sound. On the 9th day, I was fetching water at the borehole when Mama and Jerry grabbed my arm. Her eyes were red from crying, her son was one of the sick children. "You were at the old burial ground," she said, her fingers digging into my skin. "You and your father. What did you do there? What did you disturb?" "Nothing," I stammered. "We just cleared the grass." "We didn't. People are dying. Children are dying. And it started right after you finished that work." She was shouting now, and other women were gathering around us. "What did you wake up?" My father appeared from nowhere and pulled me away from her. "Leave my daughter alone," he said, his voice hard. "She's done nothing wrong." But his hand on my arm was trembling. That night, my mother made tea and called my father and me to sit at the table. My siblings had been sent to sleep at our neighbor's house. It was just the three of us in the lamplight. "Tell me the truth," my mother said, looking at my father. "What's happening? Why won't you eat? Why do you look like a dead man walking?" My father stared at his hands. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear him, "I think she's awake." My mother went very still. "Who?" "The girl. The one he stopped, his jaw working. "The one we buried." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. My mother's face had gone pale. "That was 20 years ago," she whispered. "You said she would stay quiet. You said." "I know what I said." My father slammed his hand on the table, making us both jump. Then, quieter, "But Amara heard her. Didn't you?" They both turned to look at me. My mouth was dry. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. "You heard a voice at the burial ground," my father said. It wasn't a question. A woman's voice. "Telling you to do things." I nodded. My mother made a sound like she'd been hit. She stood up, paced to the window, then back. "This is your fault," she said to my father, her voice shaking. "I told you we should have confessed. I told you the truth would come out." "Confess to what?" I found my voice finally, though it came out small and frightened. "What did you do?" They looked at each other, and in that look, I saw 20 years of shared guilt, shared fear, shared secrets. "There was a girl," my mother began, her eyes filling with tears. 20 years ago. She worked as a house girl for the Mwangi family. She was 16, maybe 17. Very beautiful. Very kind. She got pregnant," my father continued. "An old Mwangi, Kamau's father, he was the one who did it. Everyone knew, but no one said anything. The family had money, had power." My mother sat down heavily. "The girl threatened to tell the chief. To shame the family. So they." She couldn't finish. "So they killed her," the voice said in my head, and this time my mother and father heard it too. Their faces went white. The lamp flickered. The air grew cold. And standing in the corner of our kitchen, barely visible in the shadows, was the outline of a young woman. Her form wavered like smoke, but her eyes were solid and burning with rage. "Yes," she said, and her voice filled the room. "They killed me. The truth my mother buried," my mother screamed. The sound was raw and animal, and it shattered the terrible silence that had fallen over our kitchen. My father stood up so fast his chair fell backward, crashing against the floor. But neither of them could move beyond that. They were frozen, staring at the figure in the corner. She was clearer now. A young woman, maybe 17, wearing a faded blue dress that might have been pretty once. Her hair was plaited in neat rows close to her scalp. She would have been beautiful, I thought, if not for the dark stains down the front of her dress, if not for the way her head tilted at an angle that wasn't quite right, if not for her eyes, those burning, furious eyes. "You remember me now," she said, looking at my parents. "I see it in your faces." "Grace," my mother whispered. "Your name was Grace." The figure smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "So you didn't forget everything. That's something, I suppose." My father found his voice. "We didn't kill you." "We didn't." "No," Grace interrupted. "You just helped hide my body. You just dug the hole and pushed me into the ground and covered me with dirt. You just went home and ate dinner and slept in your beds while I rotted without prayers, without dignity, without even a stone to mark where I lay." My mother was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "We were young. We were afraid. The Mwangi family said if we didn't help them, they would destroy us, take our land, hurt our families. So you chose yourselves over me." Grace's voice was quiet, but it cut like a knife. "Over me and my baby." The room seemed to tilt. "Baby?" I heard myself ask. Grace looked at me then, and her expression softened slightly. "I was 4 months pregnant when they killed me. Old Mwangi's son. The child would have been a boy." I felt bile rise in my throat. My parents had helped bury a pregnant girl. Had helped a powerful family cover up murder. And I had been the one to wake her, to give her a path back into the world. "The others who helped," my father said, his voice hoarse. "Come out. The children who are sick, their parents, they were all there that night. You're punishing them." "Punishing?" Grace moved closer, and the temperature dropped further. I could see my breath now, white fog in the lamplight. "I'm collecting what's owed. You all stole my life. My child's life. 20 years you've lived while we laid in darkness. Please," my mother begged. "We've suffered too. We've carried this guilt every day." "We've." "Guilt?" Grace's voice rose, and the lamp flickered wildly. "You think guilt is payment for murder? For erasure? You gave me to the earth like garbage, and you think feeling bad about it makes us even?" The walls of our house began to shake. Dishes rattled in the cupboard. Outside, I heard our chickens shrieking in terror. "What do you want?" I asked. My voice was steadier than I felt. "You brought me here. You spoke to me. You made me tend your grave. What do you want from us?" Grace turned her full attention to me, and I felt the weight of her gaze like a physical thing. "You're innocent in this. You didn't know. That's why I could speak to you, why you could hear me. The guilty can't hear the dead, their own noise is too loud. Then why involve me at all? Because I needed hands in the living world. I needed someone to mark my grave, to acknowledge I existed. But more than that." She paused, and something like sadness crossed her face. "I needed someone to know the truth. Someone to carry it forward." "I know the truth now," I said. "The village will know too. I'll tell them what happened to you, what my parents did, what the Mwangi family did. I'll make sure everyone knows your name." "Words," Grace said bitterly. "Words change nothing. The Mwangis are still powerful. Your parents will deny it. And even if some believe you, what then? I'm still dead. My son is still dead. Justice in your world is just more words." "Then what?" my mother sobbed. "What will stop this? The children are dying, Grace. Innocent children who weren't even born when you murdered me." Grace finished. "Yes, I know. Their parents' sins, visited on them. Isn't that what your Bible says?" My father stepped forward, his hands raised. Take me instead. I was there. I helped. My blood is the one you want. Leave everyone else alone. Leave my daughter alone. And me, my mother added, moving to stand beside him. We did this together. Punish us, not the village. Grace studied them both. For a moment, I thought I saw something shift in her expression, a flicker of the girl she'd been before she died, before hatred had consumed whatever remained of her soul. Your lives for theirs, she said slowly. You would trade yourselves. Yes, they said together. No. I shouted. There has to be another way. Please, there has to. There isn't, Grace said, and now her voice was tired, so tired. This is the only language your world understands. Blood for blood. Life for life. The air in the room grew heavy, oppressive. I felt something building, some terrible pressure that made my ears ring and my chest tight. Before sunrise, Grace said. That's when I'll come for you both. Spend your last hours with your children. Tell them you love them. It's more than I got. And then she was gone. The lamp stopped flickering. The air warmed. The walls stood still. But the silence she left behind was worse than her presence had been. My mother collapsed into my father's arms, both of them weeping. I stood there, numb, my mind unable to process what had just happened. We have to run, I said. We have to leave the village, go somewhere she can't find us. She'll find us, my father said quietly. You don't run from the dead. They're everywhere and nowhere. Distance means nothing to them. Then we fight. We get Mganga, a priest, someone who can. No one can stop this, my mother said. This is our debt, Amara. We've owed it for 20 years. They spent that night holding us, me, my brother Juma, my sisters Nyambura and Akiing. They didn't tell my siblings what was happening, just held them and told them they were loved, they were good children, they would be fine. I didn't sleep. I sat outside our house, watching the stars, waiting for the sun that would bring death to my parents. When the first light touched the horizon, I heard movement inside. My father came out first, dressed in his best shirt. My mother followed, wearing her Sunday dress. They looked calm, resigned. Take care of them, my mother said to me, touching my face. Be strong. Mama. Shoo. It's all right. They walked away from our compound, hand in hand, heading toward the old burial ground. I followed at a distance, unable to stop myself. At the edge of the graveyard, Grace was waiting. She looked more solid now, more real. The sun was rising behind her, but somehow she cast no shadow. My parents knelt before her. We're sorry, my father said. For what we did to you. For our cowardice. For everything. Grace looked down at them. Sorry doesn't bring back the dead. We know, my mother whispered. Grace raised her hand, and I saw something forming in the air, darkness gathering, taking shape. I wanted to run forward, to stop what was happening, but my legs wouldn't move. Wait, Grace said suddenly. She lowered her hand and looked at me. The girl. Your daughter. She carries the story now. She'll tell it, won't she? My parents turned to look at me, hope flickering in their eyes. Yes, I said, my voice breaking. I'll tell everyone. I'll make sure they know what happened to you. I'll make sure you're remembered. Grace was quiet for a long moment. The darkness around her hand faded slowly. A name on a grave, she said finally. A stone with the truth carved into it. My name. My son's name. The names of those who killed us. Can you promise that? I promise, I said. I swear it. She looked at my parents. And you? Will you confess to the chief, to the village, to everyone? Yes, my father said. We'll tell the truth, my mother added. All of it. Grace stood there, the rising sun painting the sky red behind her. She looked young again, tired but no longer consumed by rage. Then live, she said quietly. Live with your confession. Let the village know what you did. Let them judge you. Let your daughter carry my story forward. That's the price. And then she was gone, fading like morning mist. My parents confessed everything that day. The village was horrified, outraged. The Mwangi family denied it all, but enough people remembered, enough pieces fit together. My parents lost everything, respect, friends, their place in the community. But they lived. I kept my promise. I had a stone carved with Grace's name and placed it on her grave. I told her story to anyone who would listen. The children recovered. The death stopped. The village slowly healed. But I still hear her sometimes, late at night. Not angry anymore, just sad. Just lonely. That's why I'm telling you this. Because forgotten people don't stay forgotten forever. Because buried secrets have a way of digging themselves up. Because the dead remember everything, even when the living try to forget. If you've made it this far, if this story made you feel something, share it. Let others hear it. Leave a comment telling me if you've ever felt watched in a graveyard, if you've ever heard voices where there should be silence. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because these tales need to be told. The forgotten need to be remembered. And some debts can never truly be paid. I still live in that village. My parents are alive but shunned, carrying their shame like a weight that never lifts. Grace's grave has flowers on it now, fresh ones every week. I put them there. Sometimes I think I see her standing beneath the fever tree, watching me, but when I blink, she's gone. The voice doesn't give me instructions anymore. But it whispers my name in the dark, reminding me that I'm bound to her story now, that I'll carry it until I'm buried in that same ground. Some promises last forever. Some debts pass from the dead to the living and never let go. Please, if you enjoyed this story, subscribe to enjoy more entertaining videos like this. Thank you.